No one seems to talk much about hair in Arcane, which is weird to me because the show literally uses hair like a language, and I think it is one of the best ways Arcane makes changes in character design to tell us stories. I'm going to look at 3 ways Arcane does this: length, style, and color, and what those choices tell us about Powder, Jinx, Vi, and other characters. The first most obvious change is hair length, and it's not just drastic haircuts like Jinx completely chopping all her braids off, but subtle changes in length that communicate different things. The most prominent example of this is obviously Jinx, but before Jinx there was Powder, who had very short hair. In Powder's case, the short, choppy hair to me shows young age, vulnerability, and she also has one single braid compared to Jinx, who has 2 different braids, but we'll talk about that later. Her hair was very shy-like, practical, and it gave this not yet formed vibe, as if it had never grown. Like her. It shows she has no development and a lot of dependence on others. And these little clips she puts on also make her look like she has droopy bunny ears, and it makes her look even more innocent and adorable. Then she grew it out as Jinx, and while growing hair out shows a desire for change, attempt at maturation, or some sort of identity shift, I don't think that's what we're seeing here. I think this is a desperation to hold on to Powder. Jinx never cuts her hair. It is long and it is the last thing that remains of her past. Psychologically, hair often becomes a kind of emotional archive. Some people say it holds memories. Trauma experts know that people who've experienced intense loss sometimes avoid cutting their hair because it feels like the last physical connection to their before self. So keeping it long can become a way of holding on to memories and a version of herself that she's afraid of losing. For Jinx, growing her Powder hair into something long and untouched isn't about maturity. It's her clinging to the only part of Powder that survived. Every inch of that length carries the years she refuses to let go, so she never cuts it. Until she does. When a character loses their hair against their will, it usually represents something taken from them. But when a character chooses to cut their own hair, the meaning flips. It becomes an act of reclaiming, patching up who they were before. It is often done in moments of crisis or transformation. Maybe Arcane uses this haircut to show both the trauma still within her and an attempt to reshape herself into the version she thinks she has to be. It could also mean her abandoning Jinx and Powder together, essentially killing them both. However, the real reason? It would be too hard to animate her braids and hair in these scenes. Vi's hair being short for almost their entire life isn't just a style choice. Short hair on female fighters is for practicality and mobility. You see this in everything from military design to action heroines. Vi grows up in the lanes, fighting daily, running, climbing, and protecting her siblings. Short hair makes sense for someone who's always moving and doesn't have the luxury to care about aesthetics. It also plays into her masculinity. Short hair becomes part of her identity as a tough, reliable protector. The shaved side adds to it, as it is often used to signal rebellion or characters who don't conform to societal standards. When she's in Stillwater, it's likely kept short as well for practicality. And later, when she grows her hair out even slightly, that tiny change actually means something. Growing your hair requires stability. You have to stay in one place long enough for it to grow, and you have to care for it. So Vi's slight hair growth, once she's safer, signals that she's finally allowed to exist outside pure survival mode. Jace's hair growing noticeably longer during Arcane is another example of visual storytelling. Hair that becomes longer or rougher over time usually communicates some stress and the physical cost of responsibility. This is why by the end of the season, Jace looks like that. And a lot of it is because of what he went through, which was shown to us, but his hair visually reinforces it. For almost the entire show, Caitlyn's hair is perfectly brushed, long, smooth, and neat. This isn't accidental. Her hair to me reads as order, discipline, and high societal expectations. It communicates everything she's supposed to be: elegant, obedient, proper. Even more importantly, Caitlyn never cuts her hair or drastically changes it, and that choice is important too. It becomes a symbol of her inner consistency in her morality. Even while everything around her shifts, and when we see her start to change, her hair remains the same. To me, this shows that part of her is not changing, not just physically, and she proves this at the end of the season. I also wanted to talk about Mel's hair in general, since it is one of the most interesting to me, because it carries 3 layers at once. We see cultural heritage, wealth, and political armor. Her braids instantly distinguish her from the rest of Piltover, braids with gold rings and ornaments. She also has gold in her design, which is often used to signify power and status, and Mel's gold isn't subtle, it's embedded into her braids like a crown. She literally carries her wealth and influence in her hair. It frames her face, making her look above the ordinary. This is deliberate. The more polished the braid, the more perfectly placed the rings, the more Mel is controlling her image. She weaponizes beauty. The second element we will discuss is hairstyle, because Arcane uses style changes just as intentionally as hair length. Powder's early hairstyles communicate innocence. Her short hair pulled with the tiny clips that look like bunny ears make her silhouette childlike. They even make her resemble a baby animal, which triggers an instinct to protect her, at least to me. She's a scared kid trying to look brave. Then, alternate universe Powder usually keeps her hair styled in 2 buns. Buns in character design often represent neatness, innocence, and a self that hasn't fully formed yet. This could be seen as hair hair not turning into Jinx and therefore still keeping that innocent self. Like with her hair down, she looks so much more like Powder, like she never turned into Jinx. When she wears the buns, it gives her hair symmetry of Jinx. Hardening too, and that two-part structure never goes away. No matter who she tries to become, her hair is always divided into two sections. I couldn't quite figure out why. At first, I interpreted it as Jinx having two sides, Powder and Jinx, but then that would make no sense for why AU Powder has two sides as well. Let me know your thoughts about this in the comments. Sevika's transition from longer hair to a sharp, angular bob could be a visual language for hardening. Longer hair often reads as softer or more feminine, even when the character isn't leaning into that femininity, because by no means is Sevika a feminine woman. But when Sevika shifts to the bob, everything about her silhouette becomes harsher and more efficient. It is practical and aggressive, just like Sevika. Many people did not like it, but it has grown on me, and I think the bob suits her final identity. Loyal to survival and uninterested in anything that isn't power. Lastly, let's discuss color. Vi is my favorite example of how this was used in Arcane. Her hair color journey from pink to black to pink carries more meaning than just aesthetics. Pink hair represents youth, impulsiveness, and attachment, all of the things Vi has before her relationship with Caitlyn gets rough. Pink is a warm, approachable color, and Pink Vi is exactly that. A sister who loves first, fights for family, and clings to hope even in impossible circumstances. When Vi's hair turns black after Caitlyn hits her, it signals something far deeper than just her new pit fighter look. The journey of transitioning from pink to black rather than the absolute meaning of the color black is really what I think matters more. In Arcane, hair color also functions as a narrative tool. Jinx painting Isha's hair to look like Powder reminds us of the sad memories and the desire Jinx has to preserve the past. Alternate Universe Powder has a pink streak, symbolically tying her to Vi, and the dream of the relationship they never got to maintain in that universe. This is clear it's her way of remembering Vi, and she also carries Vi's necklace with her. She is not over her death, and she blames herself for it. And if you notice, almost every significant woman in Vi's life has blue hair. Her mother, Powder, Caitlyn, and obviously Jinx. Blue symbolizes devotion and emotional anchoring. These are the people who shape Vi, who mark her attachments, and whose loss or betrayal changes her story. Hair in Arcane becomes a language of trauma, survival, identity, and memory. It's never just for aesthetics. I think the transitions themselves from color to color or style to style are more important than the final state and what that actually means. Arcane makes this storytelling almost subconscious to the viewer, but I believe it is deeply intentional. So yeah, these were just some of my thoughts I've had for a while, and if you love Arcane or video game analysis, make sure you subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.